This organisation stopped looking after its main aims set out in its founding declaration and started to change. This was an organisation that had essentially been thought up as a shield to protect the reign of men, and it became a Leviathan with various tentacles purporting to decide not only what each nation state should do, but also how all the citizens in the world should live. It's been replaced by a model of supranational government, of international bureaucrats. In this same house that purports to defend human rights, we have also included bloody dictatorships in the Human Rights Council, including Cuba and Venezuela, without reproach. In this same house, which purports to defend the rights of women, we've allowed on the CEDAW committee, countries that punish their women just for showing their skin. This is my first speech to the United Nations General Assembly, and I'd like to take this opportunity to humbly alert the different nations of the world about the path that we are moving down and have been for decades, and about the danger of this organisation failing, as it has been doing in its original mission. I haven't come here to tell the world what it should be doing. I've come here to tell the world, on the one hand, what will happen if the United Nations continues to promote collectivist policies that it's been promoting under the mantle of the 2030 Agenda, and on the other hand, the values of the new Argentina. I want to begin by giving credit where credit's due. The United Nations was born out of the horror of the cruelest war in global history, and the main aim of it was to ensure that it never happened again. To do so, the organisation engraved its fundamental principles in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. From that was born a basic agreement around one maxim, that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. Under the watch of this organisation, the adoption of these ideas, over the last 70 years, humanity has experienced the longest period of global peace in history, which has coincided with the greatest period of economic growth in history. It established an international forum in which nations can resolve their conflicts through cooperation rather than resorting instantaneously to weapons, and it achieved something previously unthinkable: to sit the 5 great powers of the world around one same table with the same veto power, despite having completely counterposed interests. All of this didn't mean that the scourge of war disappeared, but it did, at least for now, ensure that no conflict has escalated to global proportions. The result was that we moved from having 2 world wars in less than 40 years, which together claimed more than 120 million lives, to having 70 consecutive years of relative global peace and security and stability under the mantle of an order which allowed the entire world to be integrated commercially, to compete and to prosper. Because where trade enters, we don't have bullets, said Bastiat, because trade guarantees peace, peace guarantees, and freedom guarantees trade. Equality before the law guarantees freedom. It managed to ensure what Prophet Isaiah said, that he will judge between the nations and will settle disputes for many peoples. They will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not take up sword against nation, nor will they train for war anymore. This is what's happened mainly under the watch of the United Nations in its first few decades. Now, at some time, and as often happens with the majority of bureaucratic structures that are created by men, this organisation stopped looking after its main aims set out in its founding declaration and started to change. This was an organisation that had essentially been thought up as a shield to protect the reign of men, and it became a Leviathan with various tentacles purporting to decide not only not only what each nation state should do, but also how all the citizens in the world should live. That's how we moved from being an organisation that pursued peace to an organisation that imposes an ideology on its members about an endless list of topics in society. The model of the United Nations that had been successful, the origin of which we can see in the ideas of President Wilson, who talked about the need for peace without victory, and that was founded out of cooperation from nation states, has been abandoned. It's been replaced by a model of supranational government, of international bureaucrats that attempt to impose on citizens of the world a specific way of living. What we're discussing in New York this week at the Summit of the Future is nothing more than going further down this tragic path, the tragic path that this institution has adopted. Going further down this path, which in the very words of the Secretary General, calls on us to define a new social contract, redoubling our commitments in the 2030 Agenda. On this, I'd like to be clear about Argentina's position. The 2030 Agenda, although it's well-intentioned in its goals, is nothing but a supranational government program that is socialist in shape. It purports to resolve the problems of modernity with solutions that afflict the sovereignty of nation states and violate the right to life, right to freedom, and property of persons. It's an agenda that purports to resolve poverty, inequality, discrimination with legislation that simply furthers these issues, because the history of the world has shown that the only way of guaranteeing prosperity is by limiting the power of the monarch, by guaranteeing equality before the law, defending the right to life, to freedom, and to the ownership and property of individuals. The adoption of this agenda is fully in line with these privileged interests and looks beyond the principles that were set out in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It has therefore twisted the role of this organisation and set it on the wrong course. We've seen how an organisation that was born to defend the rights of man has become one of the main proponents of systematic violations of freedom, such as, for instance, the lockdowns imposed in 2020, which should be seen as a crime against humanity. In this same house, that purports to defend human rights, we have also included bloody dictatorships in the Human Rights Council, including Cuba and Venezuela, without reproach. In this same house, which purports to defend the rights of women, we've allowed on CEDAW, the CEDAW Committee, countries that punish their women just for showing their skin. In this same house that had voted against the State of Israel, which is the only country in the Middle East to defend a liberal democracy, we have simultaneously shown a total inability to respond to the scourge of terrorism. On the economic level, we have promoted collectivist policies that undermine economic growth, violate property rights, and disrupt a natural economic process, preventing the most left-behind countries to freely enjoy their own resources. They have imposed regulations and prohibitions specifically because of countries that wish to develop themselves. We have further established a toxic relationship between global governance and international credit bodies, demanding that those countries that are most left behind commit resources that they don't have to programs that they don't need, making them perpetual debtors.